Today, I am talking about individual retirement accounts or IRAs, but I'll focus more on the Roth IRA than the traditional IRA. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about the benefits and things to consider when choosing the Roth IRA. Now, it is important for you to know that this video will not answer all of your questions on IRAs. Hello and welcome or welcome back to Sev Talks Money. This is the place where we talk all things money and share tools and tips that lead to financial freedom. Now, the first point I want to make about the IRA is that the IRA is an account. It is not the investments. Meaning, when you open the account, unless you add investments to it, then you really haven't done anything. Think about a bottle of water. The IRA would be the plastic bottle. The investments would be the water in the bottle. So investments that you choose to put inside of the IRA is what drives the IRA. So again, the IRA is like an account. You open a bank account, but nothing happens until you put cash in that bank account. It is the same thing with the IRA. You open the account and then you put investments in the account. Now, what are some of the investments that an IRA holds? Mutual funds, individual stocks, bonds, index funds, annuities. Those are some of the most common ones. Also, real estate can be held inside of an IRA, but there are a lot of caveats with that. It can't be maybe like a rental property. It can't be real estate that you're making money off of. So I don't want to go into that. I just want to give you an overview of the investments that can go inside an IRA. And again, that includes like mutual funds, individual stocks, bonds, index funds, annuities. For my IRA, my Roth IRA, I have the Vanguard S&P 500, and it mirrors the S&P 500, which is the 500 largest U.S. publicly traded companies. Again, the S&P 500 is the largest U.S. 500 largest U.S. publicly traded companies. So what that means is there is a lot of diversification in that index fund, because again, it mirrors the S&P 500. But that's just for me. You may want to talk to your your financial advisor, your certified financial, your CFP. You may want to talk to somebody at your bank or your credit union if you are wanting to open an IRA to understand what can be included in your IRA. So again, diversification is key for me. And so that's one of the reasons why I have the S&P 500 in my Roth IRA. Some of the benefits of the Roth IRA also include if you are not making a lot of money. For those people who may be just starting out in their career and you're in a lower tax bracket, and I'm going to show a demonstration in a little bit, but you may be in a lower tax bracket. And so it is more feasible and it makes more sense for you to invest in a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is you're using money that's already taxed. So let's say you are in a lower tax bracket, maybe 10%, 12% tax bracket, and it would make sense for you to pay taxes now rather than later, because as you grow in your career, and as you get older, you're going to be making more money, which is going to push you into a higher tax bracket. So why not pay now on the lower tax bracket? Because the idea behind the Roth IRA versus the traditional IRA is that when you retire, you are going to be in a lower tax bracket. And I'm going to share my screen and do a demonstration of the IRAs and some of the things that would make sense for you to choose the traditional versus the IRA and all of that. So let me share my screen and I will application window, and where is Excel? Okay, while my screen is coming up, I am going to let me share a little bit about another thing to consider. One of the things to consider is the 401k and the Roth IRA or the traditional IRA. The limits that exist for each of them are independent of each other, because I was under the impression that when I contribute to my 401k, I had to count that money before deciding how much I could contribute to my Roth IRA. And that's not the case. So the IRA, contributing to an IRA is much different. The limit on that is much different from the limit on a 401k. And I'm going to share that, can't talk today, in a little bit. All right, so here is a little sample that I put together to kind of give you an idea of some things that you might want to think about when you are considering the Roth and the traditional IRA. So let's say, for example, you are in a higher tax bracket, meaning maybe the 24% tax bracket. For this sample that I did, I used 24%. And all things considered, let's say you made $1,000. That's what you made. Okay. You're in a higher tax bracket. You only made $1,000 in your paycheck. And you decided that you are going to invest all of it in a traditional IRA. And the reason you decided that is because you are deferring taxes. You made $1,000, you invested $1,000 because you are saying, I think I am going to be in a lower tax bracket when I retire. So right now you're in 24%, you made $1,000 and you're investing all of it because you are saying, I'm not going to pay Uncle Sam now, because if I do that, I'm going to be paying 24%. But I think when I retire and I can withdraw that money, I'm going to possibly be in a 12% tax bracket, for example. So at 12%, when you retire, that's when you will be taxed at 12% and I paid $120. Now, let me go back and just clarify again. I'm using this as a sample to show you the concept. There are going to be other things. There's going to be growth on your investment. There are going to be other things that would change how much you are taxed. So this, again, I'm just using these pure numbers as a sample to show the concept. So you made $1,000. You are currently taxed at 24% based on the income you're making, and you are saying, I am going to hedge my bet, and I am going to say, when I retire, I am going to be in a lower tax bracket, so I am not going to pay Uncle Sam at 24%. I am going to invest in a traditional IRA or 401k where I am paying with before tax dollars. And so I'm deferring my taxes. I am pushing off my taxes until I retire. It gives you the opportunity to take a tax deduction, possibly on your return. I mean, there are income limits and other things to consider. But again, this is a pure explanation, a pure demonstration. So I'm not considering all the other things. So you have the option to take a tax deduction on your return when you do not pay taxes right away, because it is a way for the government to say, I want to encourage you to invest in your retirement, so I'm going to give you some breaks. So you're saying, I'm going to wait until I retire to pull this money, and I will be paying at a lower rate because I think at retirement, I am going to be in a lower tax rate. Because the other option is, if you were, say, make $1,000, again, you're in a 24% tax bracket, and you are saying, I think at retirement, I am going to be probably in a higher tax bracket. If you think at retirement, you're going to be in a higher tax bracket than your current tax bracket, let's say you're going to be in a 32% tax bracket, then a Roth IRA makes sense. And here's why it makes sense. You would now pay the 24%. You would pay the 24% tax now, and you would invest the balance, which is the 760 from the 1,000. You would invest that now. And when you invest that grows tax free, meaning this money, this 760 could double, triple, quadruple, you can pull that out and don't pay taxes on it again. And of course, there's some caveats to that. But essentially, that money, the 760, could double, triple, quadruple, whatever, and you would not pay taxes on it again. So that is the benefit of the Roth IRA. Again, let me run through that. If you were to say, I think my tax rate is going to be lower at retirement, then it would make sense to do the traditional IRA, the 401k, because then you would not pay taxes until you pull it out at retirement, which would be at the lower rate. If you say, I think my retirement rate is going to be, tax rate is going to be higher, then it makes sense to pay the tax now and have that money grow tax free, because anything that grows in your traditional IRA and your 401k now, because you put it in with before tax dollars, when you pull that out, you're going to have to pay taxes. If you put the money in the Roth IRA, you pull that out, you don't have to pay taxes. Again, there are some caveats to that, because if you put in 760 and it grows to 780, for example, you can pull out 760 before the age of 59 and a half without penalty. But if you pull out the 20, which is the growth, then you may have to pay taxes on that. But essentially, if you wait until retirement age and you pull out all of this money from the Roth IRA, you don't have to worry about Uncle Sam coming after you. Now, for someone who's in a lower tax bracket, here's where it makes sense for you. You are only making money, you're only being taxed at 10 or 12%, the lowest tax rates. So it would not make sense for you to put your money in a traditional IRA or in a 401k. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, the sequence of investment in a little bit, but it wouldn't make sense. And here is why. Let's say you're making again, the $1,000, and you are in the 12% or 10% tax bracket. Well, your tax rate could either stay the same or it's going to grow as you make more money. So why not stuff as much as you can in the lower tax bracket, pay the tax now, invest all of that money so it can grow tax free. So when you get to the 24% and the 32% tax bracket or the 22% tax bracket, now you have already saved money at the lower tax rate. You've already paid that tax, and that money is growing tax free. So by the time you grow in your career and at the higher tax rate, you've already socked away a good amount of money at the lower tax rate. So even if you decide to put money in the traditional IRA and the 401k at the higher, when you're in the higher tax bracket, you've already saved yourself some money and have some cushion with tax exempt monies that you put in a Roth IRA. And I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments or in the chat. So again, that's the overview, general overview. And again, as I share this, I'm just talking pure numbers. I'm not looking at growth. I'm not looking at all the other things that would change your tax position. I'm just using these numbers as pure numbers to show you the concept. So I'm going to stop sharing now and go back to the screen. And so the other thing I want to talk about is, and I already shared about diversification and why I chose the S&P 500 in my Roth IRA. And again, to repeat, the Roth IRA, you're already taxed. If you're in a lower tax bracket and you have money, you're in a lower tax bracket and you are not yet you have not reached your full career potential, sock that money away in the Roth IRA, because you are taxed at the lower rate. When you retire, it doesn't matter what tax rate you're in, because you've already socked that money at the lower tax rate. As you earn, you are going to get into in a higher tax bracket. So that's when you want to maybe look at the traditional IRA. All right, two things I want to mention. For the Roth IRA, before you invest in a traditional or a Roth IRA, if your employer offers you a match on your 401k, you want to take that. So the first thing you want to look at is making sure you take advantage of the employer match, because can we say free money? Okay. Let's say your employer says, I am going to match 3% of up to 3% of whatever you put in your 401k. you want to take advantage of that because guess what? You've just now invested 6%. So even if they say we're only going to match 50 cents on every dollar or 25 cents on every dollar, that's free money that you don't want to take away, give up, because that money is going to grow in your investment. So you want to think about doing, first of all, the employer matching that. Then you can consider the traditional or the Roth IRA and their income limits, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So for the 401k, I mentioned before that the limits for each is separate from each other. I was under the impression that I had to, again, look at the 401k, see how much I'm contributing to that, and then subtract that to determine how much to contribute to the IRA, but that's not the case. The 401k has its own separate limit from the IRA. As of now, it's like 19,500. And if you're over 50, you can do a catch-up provision and contribute over, I think it's 6,500 to the 401k. And for the IRA, the maximum contribution is 6,000. If you're over 50, you can do a catch-up of you can put in to the IRA $7,000. And you can think, okay, I'm going to put some in the traditional, some in the Roth, but together they cannot go over that contribution of 6,000 or 7,000 if you're over age 50. Now, there is one of the benefits or the Roth IRA is that there is no age limit to open in a Roth IRA. The IRS doesn't care because guess what? They've gotten their money. They've gotten their taxes. Okay. So as long as you have earned income, if your child is working in your business, let's say, you can open a custodial Roth IRA for them. If they're working their summer job, you want to encourage your kids to open a Roth IRA because again, their income, they're probably at 10%. And of course, the 10%, that's just a pure rate. With a marginal tax rate, it's probably going to be lower than that. So they're at 10%. So whatever money is taxes coming out of their income, it is better for them to go ahead and invest right now in a Roth IRA when they're younger and their earning potential hasn't reached maximum capacity. So again, I mentioned the age limit for opening a Roth IRA. There is none. You can actually open an IRA, Roth IRA 70 when you're 70 and a half and older. As long as you have earned income, you can open a Roth IRA whenever. The age limit, though, for the traditional IRA is 70 and a half. So after 70 and a half, even if you are having earned income, you are limited from opening an IRA. And age 72 for the traditional IRA, at age 72, you must begin withdrawing money. Whereas the Roth IRA, you could keep it in there forever and a day. There is no age limit for when you have to withdraw that money because again, that's money you pay taxes to. The IRS want their money. They're either going to get it on the front end with the Roth IRA or they're going to get it on the back end with the traditional IRA. So they're going to limit you how long you can keep that money in there and not pay taxes, which is the reason for the age limits on the traditional IRA. Because remember, that money is going in before taxes. And you can withdraw your money before 59 and a half on a Roth IRA. And I think I mentioned before where you have to be careful with how much you withdraw, because if you put, say, 10,000, if you have 10,000 in the Roth IRA, and it grew to 15,000 because the 5,000 is the interest that's grown on it. You have to be careful about how much you withdraw. You can withdraw that 10,000 with no problem, but when you start touching that earnings before 59 and a half, then there could be tax implications. There could be the 10% penalty. So you want to let it sit in there for at least 59 and a half. And then also you should have owned your Roth IRA for at least 5 years before you start making withdrawals, because again, there could be consequences of withdrawing before that 5-year period. Another thing, even though there is a freedom of withdrawing from the Roth IRA whenever, you have to consider the limits for how much you can put in. So let's say you had 100,000 in your Roth IRA. And you can take that out whenever because it's your money. You pay taxes on it. The issue becomes let's say you take the 100,000 and then you said, oops, you know what? I want to put back 30,000 of it. You would not be able to put back 30,000 because the annual limits constrains you. You can only put back 6,000 for that year or 7,000 if you're over age 50. So that's the thing to consider. So even though it's your money and you can take it out whenever, you have to consider, if I want to put it back, how would that limit me? Because again, it's only 6,000 or 7,000 for all your IRAs combined. If you can't be 6,000 in this one, 6,000 in that one, 6,000 in this one, it has to be 6,000 combined. And there are income limits to contributing to an IRA. You're going to find your modified AGI, or modified adjusted gross income, on line 11 of your form 1040. And if that amount is going to govern whether or not you can contribute to a Roth IRA. So if you are single, head of household, your modified AGI, adjusted gross income, is 125,000 or less, you can contribute the full amount, all things considered. And again, there are other things. I'm just using pure numbers. All things considered, you can contribute the full amount, which is the 6,000 or 7,000 if you're over age 50. Between 125,000 and 140, it starts to taper off how much you can contribute. Once it gets 140, you cannot contribute anymore. Remember now, this is your modified adjusted gross income. So you could make, let's say, $140,000, but after all adjustments, and in order to get to the modified adjusted gross income, you're looking at deductibles such as maybe student loan interest. You're looking at HSA, all of those things that deducts from your gross income to get you to your modified gross income, may bring you into the range where you can contribute to your Roth IRA. So don't just think, okay, I'm making 130, I can't contribute, or I'm making 140, I can't. Well, it depends on, again, your adjusted gross income, your modified adjusted gross income. Or after all of those deductions that get you to line 11, that's the number you look at to determine if you qualify to make the full amount or an adjusted amount if you're single or head of household. If you're married filing jointly, those numbers for you are 198,000 to 208. So if you are making 198,000 married filing jointly, modified gross income on adjusted gross income on line 11 of your tax form is 198,000, is less than 198,000, you can contribute the full amount. If it's between 198 and 208, then there's going to be the number starts decreasing on how much you can contribute for that year. And if you're 208 and over, then no bueno, you cannot contribute to the IRA. Now, there is something called a backdoor provision for the IRA, where you can end up being able to contribute to the Roth IRA or even the traditional IRA using, the Roth IRA backup. The backdoor provision is where you can contribute to the Roth IRA using that backdoor provision, which I'm not going to go into because it's a little bit more detail, but just know that you have that option. So just because these numbers are shared here doesn't mean you can't still contribute to a Roth IRA. You may be able to use the backdoor provision to contribute to a Roth IRA. And the reason you want to do the Roth IRA, again, is you want to minimize your taxes at retirement, because when you're contributing to your 401k, that money is going to be taxed. What you put in plus the interest is going to be taxed at whatever tax rate bracket you're in at that time. For the Roth IRA, you don't have that. So you want to kind of balance out your investments so that when you withdraw your money for retirement, you're not paying a whole lot of tax on everything. You do have something that you've already paid taxes on, and it gives you a little bit of a cushion. The deadline to put money in to fund your IRA, or put money in your IRA, it coincides with the tax filing deadline. So you can still, like for 2021, for 2020, tax year 2020, our tax I think our tax due date, I don't remember. I think it's May or I think they moved it to May or June 15th, whatever it is, whatever that date is, you can still contribute to the 2020 IRA up to that date, that deadline. So whatever the tax filing deadline is for tax year 2020, you can still contribute to your you can still contribute to an IRA. So for that, it's of course, if you think you're going to have a high tax burden for your 2020 tax year, then it might be a good thing to sock some money away in a traditional IRA. And if you haven't caught up on your 401k, you want to think about that towards the end of the year, and you want to try to sock some money in your 401k, because again, those are traditional IRA and the 401k are vehicles where you're not paying taxes right now. So if you think your tax burden is going to be high, you want to sock as much money into those as possible up to the limit that it allows, so that you can balance out your tax burden. Now, it is very easy to open a Roth IRA. You can go to the Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, any of those websites, and open an IRA. Or you can go see your certified financial planner, your bank, or even your credit union. There are just easy ways to do that. You just want to make sure that you are using a fee not a fee-based service, meaning that they're not going to put investments into your IRA based on what they are getting paid, because you want to go to somebody who has fiduciary responsibilities, meaning they have to make the best decisions for you, the customer. So again, remember, the IRA is the bottle here represents the IRA. The water inside represents the investments that the IRA holds. The IRA itself is not the investments. The IRA is just a vehicle for the investments in your retirement plan. So I hope that was very helpful, and I'm going to check the comments to see if there are any questions on IRA. And before I check the comments, I just want to put this up to say, to give a disclaimer, to say content on this channel is general information and it's for educational purposes, entertainment purposes only. Any information contained in this video should not be considered or relied upon as financial or legal advice, and we disclaim any liability in conjunction with the use of this information. Everyone's financial situation is different, and you should consult a financial professional for advice specific to your situation. So again, I'm sharing general information here. If you need information specific to your situation, you can make an appointment with me. And if it's something outside of my wheelhouse, I have a referral, a listing of referral for who I can send you to. But again, anything shared here is just general information. It's not going to be, you can't take it and say, I'm going to do this because Severin said, because it's not specific enough to your situation. We would have to examine your situation and see how best this information would fit your situation. So let me check the comments and see if there are any questions. Beverly saying hi. Asian American Legal Focus is saying hi. Beverly says, I love free money. Me too. I love free money. And Sid Miami is saying very clear. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And again, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat, or you can post them in the comment, and I will answer them, or I will get it. And eventually I am going to get someone who's going to come on the program and is going to talk in more depth about retirement vehicles and different things you can do, like HSAs, how you can shelter your money and help you have a more balanced tax picture when you retire, because you don't want everything to be taxed at retirement. You want to have something that the IRS can't touch when you retire. And Asian American Legal Focus is saying, thanks, have a great week. And if you have not followed her, please go follow Judy on Asian American Legal Focus on her channel. She shares a lot of legal things in a fun and entertaining way, but you also get to learn some things. So go follow Judy if you haven't yet. Thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you next Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and tell somebody else about this program. See you later.